Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Patricia Otasic, and I'm from the College of Graduate Studies. The College of Graduate Studies is a rather new service offered by the College. The College of Graduate Studies is offering a new service. It's the Graduate Student Resource Center. Our Resource Center is set up to help students and support them in areas such as this regarding your professional development. I'm here today with Dr. Donna Schulteis, if she doesn't mind standing up for a moment and waving to all of you. Dr. Schulteis is the Associate Dean of the College of Graduate Studies, and she's also a co-program director in the College of Education in counseling psychology. And I know many of you are from education today, so you may know her from that. Our goal today is to provide you with an opportunity to learn from the experiences of our expert panel here that you'll be meeting in just a few moments. We'd like you to gain information for your own personal career and leadership development, and hopefully a little bit of inspiration as well, along with that information. Each of our panelists will discuss in their own way their path in their career and their inspiration and their reasons for heading toward a leadership pathway, and hopefully that will give you some inspiration for your own. We'll also discuss some questions that you may have related to these topics, and I'll start with a little bit of a background on each of our panelists, but meanwhile, can everyone hear me okay? Is this all right for you? Okay. We are videotaping this series, just so that you know, so it will be available on our website afterwards. This is one of 3 series regarding career and leadership for students, so you'll be able to see all 3 of those on our website. The Instructional Media Services Department has been very generous in offering us assistance, so hopefully you'll be able to make the most of that. So I'll begin right here to my left. This is Mr. Dwayne Crockram. Mr. Crockram joins us this afternoon from the Washkowitz College of Engineering. He currently serves as an executive in residence at Washkowitz. Mr. Crockram is a veteran human services professional. He served as an area HR manager with Parker Hannafin. He was responsible for directing recruitment, talent development, and employee relations. Mr. Crockram also held managerial HR positions with the Warner and Swayze Company, with NASA in Washington, D.C., and with Sherwin-Williams. He brings to all of you a wealth of experience in connecting college graduates with career opportunities. Mr. Crockram holds a Bachelor's of Arts degree from Baldwin Wallace University, also a Master in Business Administration from Lake Erie College, and an Industrial Relations Certificate from Cleveland State University. He's a member of the College of Engineering's Diversity Council and an emeritus member of the college's visiting committee. Welcome to our panel, Mr. Crockram.
Thank you.
Next, we have Dr. Nancy DiUlio. Dr. DiUlio joins us from Case Western Reserve University this afternoon. She began her teaching career at John Carroll University before joining Case Western. At Case, she taught in the biology department, teaching both graduate and undergraduate courses for more than 10 years. Dr. DiUlio moved to university administration approximately 6 years ago at Case. She currently serves as Senior Associate Dean of Undergraduate Studies, and she is responsible for the advisement of nearly 900 students across all majors and minors. Dr. DiUlio earned a PhD in biochemistry from the Pennsylvania State University. She also completed postdoctoral work at the Cleveland Clinic in the Lerner Research Institute. Her passion for biomedical research is matched equally with her interest in teaching, so we'd like to welcome Dr. DiUlio to our panel today.
Thank you.
Next to Dr. DiUlio, we have our provost, Dr. Deirdre McGeehan. Dr. McGeehan is the provost and senior vice president for academic affairs. She's the chief academic officer and the chief operating officer at Cleveland State University. She oversees 9 university units, provides leadership in coordinating university operations on both the academic side and the non-academic side. Provost McGeehan served most recently as a dean in residence for the College of Graduate Schools and as vice chancellor for research and graduate studies at East Carolina University. While there, she oversaw the research, the graduate education, engagement, innovation, and economic development. Her own research career has resulted in cumulative funding of more than $3 million. Prior to that, Provost McGeehan served as an associate vice president for research and as dean of the graduate school at the University of Maine. While there, she also served as the Margaret Chase Smith Center for Public Policy's director. Provost McGeehan has served on numerous local and state national commissions. She holds a bachelor's degree in sociology from Queen's University in Belfast, a Master of Arts in Sociology from the University of York, and a PhD in Geography from the Open University in England. Provost McGeehan, thank you for joining us here today. She's been here at Cleveland State University since July of 2013. Welcome to our panel. And next at the far end, we have Dr. Julian Earls. Last but certainly not least, Dr. Earls is an executive and resident at the Monte Ahuja College of Business. He's been instrumental in the creation of the Campus International School and also the STEM High School here. He serves as president of Entrepreneurial Engagement Ohio. That's a community nonprofit organization which provides educational instruction, curriculum, and mentoring services which helps students develop entrepreneurial, business, economic, and scientific literacy. Dr. Earls was retired as the director of the NASA Glenn Research Center in Cleveland, Ohio. There he oversaw a workforce of 3,000 employees. He directed programs in aeronautical and space propulsion, microgravity sciences, and in fluid physics, to name a few. Dr. Earls holds 11 university degrees, including a PhD in radiation physics from the University of Michigan. Also, he's a graduate of the Management Development Program at Harvard Business School. Dr. Earls has been awarded 7 honorary doctorates, including the Honorary Doctor of Science degrees by Cleveland State University. He's received numerous local and national service awards, including the Meritorious Rank Award from President Clinton in 1999 and from President Bush in 2004. Welcome to our panel, Dr. Earls. So we'll begin here with a short presentation by each of our panelists and experts in this area. They will discuss their perspective, as I mentioned, and their personal experiences in career and leadership development. So we'll start with Mr. Crockram on my left and move down from there. So thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for having me this afternoon. I want to get by my credentials and a few other things, and kind of just dig into a few things that will perhaps stimulate questions and some chatter back and forth where we can all have perhaps a learning experience. I think, you know, one of the platforms that we're to operate from this afternoon is kind of talking about our accomplishments, and I think leaders don't get caught up in accomplishments that much, other than what's next on the list, and if we those accomplishments you've heard across the panel here. I think if there are accomplishments for me, it's having worked for major Fortune 500 corporations, including NASA, and I retired August of 2013 from the Parker Hannifin Corporation, and then I had the opportunity given to me by executives at Parker to help out here at the university, administrating the Washkowitz scholarships and the Parker scholarships and the business schools. So, and then I get to help in the diversity side of the school as well, in terms of retention and recruitment of minorities and females to the university. So that's powerful for me. That's kind of like putting me back where I'd like to be. I grew up not too far from here. I grew up in the Glenville area, a little street called Somerset. 99th and Somerset is where I grew up, and so being here at Cleveland State is kind of putting me back into my element, so to speak. And so, having 40 years of experience in human resource leadership roles kind of gave me a springboard to basically observe other leaders in terms of what they were good at, whether that was in the educational system, whether that was in the manufacturing, labor, business system of it. I've been fortunate to observe a lot of great people. During my days at NASA, I was just floored with the experience and energy and the diversity that was throughout all the codes and facilities. But we don't hear about them that much, and I'm sure you will soon with Dr. Earl's on the panel. But after accomplishment and accomplishment, we're to talk about roles of mentors and in your career path. And the only thing I can say is that for me, my greatest role models were my mom, my father, neighbors, men and women that I worked with that were laborers, blue-collar people, white-collar people, ministers, no-collar people. And one of the interesting things that comes along in your career is you always want to find someone stacked a little bit above or have that sense of knowledge that you're reaching for. If you're reaching for those next job opportunities, whatever the profession is, you want to know someone that is at those levels, right? Or operating at those levels. Why can't they become mentors? So you'll hear a lot of executives saying, well, you know what? I have an executive mentor internal of the corporation or in the work area. And then you'll hear of those executives that will tell you, you know what? I have an executive mentor external of my business as well. So internal and external mentors are what you want to do. And along with the mentoring, it's not the burden of the mentor to reach out to you all the time. It's on your back. It's what you want in terms of consistency, meetings. Maybe it's just a lunch to go over problems or a phone call or an email. You are reaching out and touching. That person will come back to you in one way or another and share answers or pathways for you to become a success. So, and you can never have too many mentors. Your network broadens and broadens and broadens, and you have to continue networking and creating those mentors for yourself. Some will introduce themselves to you automatically. They want to be your mentor. They'll see you through your career. Then there are those that will say, well, I don't have a lot of time, but let's talk. Let's meet up for lunch once a month. And it starts. So you have to find those people. And in finding them, I think you create that broad network that is so important, whether it's education, starting your own business, or working inside of a small business or large business. There's a couple other things that we were asked to talk about, and that is thoughts on competencies for graduate students will need throughout their careers. And I talk about this quite often on college campuses. It's basic. It's like playing in the sandbox with everyone else. Having values, being honest, having integrity is so important, because your managers, your leaders want to be able to trust you with whatever project or whatever they've empowered you with, and leave the room or leave the building and know that you're going to get it done. You're going to get it done. Now, that person may want it done a certain way, but you're doing it your way, and if the results is still over here where it should be, that leader is going to compliment you. Those things are celebrated. You get the pat on the back or whatever the case may be. So I think it's important to note that there's basic values. I think in many corporations, in our school system or whatever, there has to be a spiritual piece that ties you together in terms of character and behavior. If that makes sense, and I hope I'm again stimulating some questions here. But there's a difference between leaders and managers. leaders look at the horizon different. Managers may not look at the horizon at all. Leaders will reach out and look over the horizon and say, you know what? I can go up there and touch the sun. I'm going to design a pathway and try to get to it and make that happen. A manager is going to say, you know what? I see what you're saying. I'm going to get you here, here, here. And it is very tactical in helping that leader along. A leader has vision. A leader is constantly planning. A leader is has that background and constant effort to gain knowledge to figure out what the next hill is going to look like. If I'm getting through to you, it's not just managing a project. Now, a lot of leaders that I've come in contact with and have a high regard for are those men and women that understand that everything costs. If in fact you need new books, if you need new materials, if you need X amount of materials for a project, it's going to cost something. And it takes X number of people to execute on whatever project it may be. And so understanding finances and systems and projects is very important, whether you're in education, whether you're in business, whether you're running a nonprofit. You have to understand finances. You have to understand where the money's coming in and how it going out, what the revenue is and what you're spending. So, and leaders understand that. They have a great feel for that. Sometimes they disregard it in order to get where they're going, and they're asking other people to take care of it, but they're conscious of it. So I was asked to talk about one of the greatest influences in my life to pursue the jobs that and career that I've selected for myself for 40 years. There was a gentleman, a professor, a full faculty member at Baldwin-Wallace College. His name was Dr. Robert Drake, and he recently passed away. He spent 10 years in the Saudi culture and taught at Baldwin-Wallace College, and he was an expert in political science. And one day he called me to his office. He said, "Dwayne, you did great in constitutional law, and you did great over here, you know, and you have such a way about you. You need to think about human personnel at the time. You need to think about personnel." I had no idea what he was talking about. And I inquired about it. I investigated it. And finally, upon graduation, I went to work for the Sherwin-Williams Corporation as a regional recruiter covering 8 states. But I think leadership, after all said and done, what influences you, it's a higher calling. It's not dollars and cents. To some people it is. Oh, I'm going to take that assistant principal's job because it means more money. Yeah, it does. But when you realize that it's not about money and not about you, you begin to work and lead at a higher level. You really do. And that's so important. When people know where you come from, when people are able to trust you because you don't have a dollar in the back of your mind in terms of in your pocket, when you have the expertise to guide others and to grow others at a different level, eventually someone to replace you or to fill in other executive slots behind you, you're leading at a different level. When people can take your word and say, okay, the boss is gone, I know exactly what she or he wants, and I don't have to look over my shoulders because I know I have the support of my leader, you're leading at a higher level. And that's so important. And come to my mind, in my 25-year history, if there's someone, there's two people. If there's two people that I can point to at Parker Hannafin, that's Don Washkowitz. I never had to look over my shoulders. Another gentleman was Marwan Kashkush. Never had to look over my shoulders, because these men led and there's certainly women there that of the same nature, but these men, you never had to look over your shoulders. Once you had an assignment, you go take care of it. I think that's important. It's leading at a different level. So the other piece of leadership, you hire, you might even place it in a managerial kind of effect, but leaders hire and grow, they hire real hard, and they manage easy. And maybe that spurs some questions here, but that's very real. And I think one of the easiest things for me was always being able to hire and grow talent. As I was exiting Parker, I looked around and I said, oh my goodness, I hired him 25 years ago. He's at a position now I could go to work for him. So that's fulfilling. Some of the other pieces or challenge would be organizational balancing, which is huge. That should spur some questions. and keeping budgets. You know, I'm always that person. Oh, are we on budget? Is this project on target? You know, looking back and forth, you always want things just so you can say, okay, I've done it, I'm there, and I got the right people on the right bus, in the right seats, we're okay. So, books that I would recommend reading. I made kind of a laundry list, and I kind of went overboard. I was at home and saying, oh, this one, oh, no, that one. But one of my favorites is Lincoln on Leadership, Abraham Lincoln on Leadership. It's thoughtful. It's a primer for leadership. If you're in a leadership position, everybody has to find one day their Ulysses S. Grant. You just don't grow them overnight. You have to go out and find them and give them different assignments, and then put them in the chief executive slots at a later date. Leading with soul, after chasing the bottom line and staying on one step ahead of the competition, there comes another consideration for the mind and body. So these are books that I've gone through and read, and I think you may enjoy. 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John Maxwell. Instinct and life experiences limit you, but your vision has to be wide and open without a lid. Keyword lid, and Maxwell highlights that. The other is Sun Tzu, The Art of War, and it's rather aggressive, but you'll find it in military schools, you'll find it in business schools, you'll find it, in political science arenas. So it's a worthwhile reading. And then The Model Leader by Dwayne D. Witt is high theory guide to effective leaders, which identifies 25 competencies. All the books here have competencies in them, but I thought that would be a great book to read. There's others, but including emotional theory. But I'm handing it to you.
All right.
So that's enough of me and enough of my thinking, so thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. So as you heard, my name's Nancy DiUlio, and I'm so happy to be here today, just from that university down the street, Case Western. And I have to, first of all, compliment Cleveland State. The campus has grown so beautifully in its home here on Euclid Avenue in downtown Cleveland. And every time I come to visit, I'm impressed with all the great things going on here on campus. So for me, in thinking about leadership and thinking about graduate students and where you're going, I have to say that the story for me always starts with education. So education is a centerpiece of everything that I have ever been passionate about, and education is the centerpiece of what has drawn me to become a leader in higher education. So my goal when I went to university as an undergrad way back when, I got to university. I grew up in a really tiny, small, rural town in Pennsylvania. I got to this university. It was the coolest place I had ever been. I loved my classes. I loved my classmates, and my professors were just, these people knew so many cool things. And I thought, I want to stay here for the rest of my life. So I started casting about as an undergrad to find a way to stay on a university campus for the rest of my life. And I have to say, I have been fortunate enough to find a way to do just that. And I couldn't be happier. And so I started with a goal when I was an undergrad to find a career in higher education. And I had hoped to become a faculty member so I could teach. And so the path that I saw from a traditional faculty perspective was to earn a PhD. So I went into a graduate program and worked on a PhD, and I had this privilege of spending 6 years thinking really deeply about a discipline that I enjoyed. And the privilege to have that time to think about something and just really think about it and turn it around in your head was a formative experience and actually helped me develop habits of thinking deeply about the challenges that are presented to me every day in my work that's very different from that now, but those habits of mind, those habits of thinking have really stuck with me. After I earned my PhD, I went and did a postdoc at the Cleveland Clinic. And what is more different from a university than this monolithic Cleveland Clinic research enterprise? It wasn't the place I thought I was going to go from graduate school, but it opened so many doors for me and and challenged me to stretch in a lot of different ways. I had to learn how to be in charge of a research project and think about a budget. Oh my goodness, think about a budget. Do I have the money to do what I want to do? Where do I get it? I had to learn to meet deadlines. The main secret in being successful in academics and probably beyond is to meet deadlines. And when you're an academic, you have to meet really short deadlines sometimes, but when you do that, you're going to be successful. So meet those deadlines. It really stretched me in a lot of ways. And then finally, after being a postdoc for a while, I started teaching, and I found my true passion. And that was teaching students about a discipline that I love. And so I got to do that for a long time. And as I started my teaching career, moving on from my postdoc, mentors played a huge role in that. I had several different people that I used as mentors in different ways. As a researcher and planning and thinking, I had some research mentors. But as an educator, I found some people who were really good at teaching, really got it, understood students, and they were my mentors. But some of my most important mentors were the students in my classes. The students in my classes could more clearly than anyone else tell me when I was being effective or not, if I just listened to them. So listening to my students helped me learn a tremendous amount about the craft of teaching. And so when I went in, I thought, oh man, I know everything there is to know about the Krebs cycle. I can teach this like that. But teaching isn't like that. You need to figure out where your students are starting from and what they need to accomplish their goals. So my students have been some of my most powerful mentors. In terms of being a competent leader, I just have a couple pieces of advice for you. Most importantly, when you take on a leadership role, is to listen. And you have to listen to a lot of people. You have to listen to the person who's your boss, of course. You have to listen to the people that you're leading. And you have to listen to the people that are being affected by the mission of your organization. So where I work now, I work in the Office of Undergraduate Studies. The mission of my educational unit is to support our undergraduate students in being successful in their undergraduate education and moving on from there. It's critical that not only do I listen to the provost, and we have a provost here, you should always listen to everything the provost says, they're always right, right? I gotta listen to the provost, but I need to listen to my students too, so I know where they are and where they're coming from, so they can tell me what they need in terms of support. So you have to listen from above and you have to listen from below. You have to listen to your staff, you have to listen to the people that your mission is really about. So that's important. Meet those deadlines, even the short ones, and ask questions when you need information. It's okay to say, you know, I don't really know what we need to accomplish X, Y, or Z, but then to go out and seek out that information, right? So some days my boss will say to me, this is what you need to do, how are you gonna do that? And I'll say, I don't know, but I'll get back to you. It's okay to take the time to think and figure it out. Sometimes I'll have a student in front of me. So I advise a lot of undergraduates and they'll ask me a question. I'll say, that's a great question, I don't know. And first of all, they're taken aback, you know. And the first time I had to say, I don't know to a student, I was afraid they would lose faith in me. But it's a moment for both of us to learn. And so my student and I, we get on the web, we search for some information, and we learn it together. The people that work for me in the office that I supervise ask me questions and I say I don't know. It empowers them to find the answer and teach me. Good leadership is about empowering people. Trust the people that you hire, trust the people that you work with, give them responsibility and expect them to meet those responsibilities. That's really good leadership. And then finally, the last thing I want to say is all of you are going to find opportunities along the way to get involved in something that you may not have even knew existed, right? You didn't know HR was a career, but it became a great career. If someone had asked me when I was a PhD student, what do you want to do? What's your career goal? I would never have said, I want to be the Associate Dean of Undergraduate Studies, because I didn't even know that that was a job. So I didn't know this job existed. So as I was coming along, I did research, I was teaching, I was learning about undergraduate culture, I was learning about the university and the organization of the university, and I got to know about this undergraduate studies thing, and this job opened up, and I thought, you know, that could be really fun, but it's really scary because I don't really know what it's all about, and I'm going to give up something I know. But I jumped at that chance, and it became really fulfilling. I found a way to serve my organization, to serve my university, and to serve our students in a totally different role than I had as an instructor in teaching them in their classes. And it has been some of the most satisfying work that I have ever done. I didn't know this job existed, but it turns out it's really the right job for me. So when you see a chance, take that chance, jump in, and do some good. So that's my advice to you, and that's sort of my path to leadership and some of the things I think are important. So thank you.
Okay, and are we on, yeah?
Yeah.
As we go down the line, it's harder and harder for the rest of us to say something original, you see. Anyway, I think one of the interesting things when we come on panels like this is for some of us to say, gosh, I'm a leader. How did I get to this point? You know, you wake up one morning and suddenly, you know, how did I get to this point in my career? And there's a sort of a humorous story somebody once told about some tourists going through a village somewhere in Europe. It's a quaint old village, and they see some old guy sitting on a bench, and one guy turns to this old guy and says rather in a patronizing way, he said, were any great men born in this village? And the guy said, no, only babies. What that means is we all start somewhere, and I sometimes consider myself, I call myself the accidental administrator. You saw that movie, The Accidental Tourist. It is not, as you said, when people, if they'd interviewed you in third grade or fourth grade and say, what do you want to be when you grow up, little girl? You don't say, I want to be a provost. First of all, nobody even knows what that is, and you have to explain it. And by the way, when you occupy a title like this, sometimes your ego really does get dinged every now and then. We had graduation in the winter. I was sitting beside the valedictorian, and the poor guy, you know, these ceremonies do go on a little bit, and that's okay. We have to be there, and I'm jumping up and down doing all the introductions, and I'm trying to keep this poor guy happy because he'd probably rather be down with all his fellow students, or at least he could be on his phone and playing a game or watching a YouTube video. And so I'm trying to keep him busy and occupied. And finally, he turned around to me and says, "Say, do you work here full time?" And yesterday, I got a memo from students that, "What department does the provost work for?" All of them. So I was not one of these people who sort of planned out, in 5 years I want to do this, in another 10 years I want to do that. But I was always of the mind that if a door opened, I always looked through that door to see, what does that look through there? And if that looked interesting, I went through the door. Now, I had a career rather similar to my good colleague here, in the sense that I was even worse. I was a university brat. My father was a clinical professor, so I guess I had no option. And apparently at age 4, as we drove past the university, I said, "I'm going there." So I was clearly just too ambitious at a very early age. But then I just loved being at a university. I thought it was amazing that somebody was allowing me just to read books and write essays and explore things. And I have to add that you'll detect a slight accent here. I grew up in Belfast, Northern Ireland, and I grew up at the absolute worst time. We were total war. People in my dorms got machine gunned to death. The girl beside me in high school planted a bomb. I mean, it was just total war. So education became an oasis. It was a place of refuge. Quite honestly, I'm sure I retreated into my mind because it was a safe place to be. Reading and music got me through a lot of that stuff. It also was the vehicle that allowed me to get out of the place. But I never really thought, and I just kept pursuing that university career. So I think a university career was something I seemed to be on track for. And I was quite happy as a faculty member and doing my work. I too applied for grants. And by the way, applying for grants are a really good discipline because, you know, when you get the news that you've got, somebody says, well, there's good news and bad news. The good news is we got the grant. The bad news is we got the grant. Now we got to deliver. Now we got those deadlines. You got to get that budget working. It's one of the first introductions to project management. So when you do something like that, whether it's a foundation grant for something in your neighborhood, or it's a big my first one was an NSF grant, you've got to deliver. It's one thing, you know, when you have to turn up and teach your classes and you've got to prep and all those things, but when you've got to deliver to the federal government a product in those budgets, it's, as a man said, like hanging, it concentrates the mind wonderfully. So there was all of that, and I was quite happy doing that. And I was an interesting joint appointment. I was jointly in a department in a Center for Public Policy, which I loved because I had an application. Now, I should tell you that my original plans were to go into medicine. I was going to follow my family. I was going to go into medicine. And I was in the science track, and I was heading in that direction. But quite honestly, the dynamics of Northern Ireland and the situation there, my just total bewilderment by human nature and what we were killing, literally killing one another, I thought, I have to understand this more. I have to understand people more. And I took a 180-degree turn and went into the social sciences. I flirted with going back into medicine, but pretty much stayed in the social sciences, although I was always motivated by the fact, what can I do that will help people? It wasn't curing diseases or diagnosing, but what can I do that will help humanity and move us forward? And our director of the Public Policy Center left to take up a new job. And the then Vice Chancellor appointed me and said, Deirdre, we need you to take over. And I went, I take over? You take over, Deirdre. So there I was thrust into it. And, you know, I thought for a moment, I said, give me 24 hours. And I went and did it, and I said, right, I will do this. And it was a wonderful experience because I learned what I was capable of. And then I suddenly realized, I have ideas on how to make this better. I think I've got an idea. I think we can do this, and we could do that, and you'd sound it out, and you find a team, and you got people on board, and boy, suddenly you could do it, and you could develop. So you're honing your skills along the way. You're constantly in a learning process with leadership. Anytime you think you're done, you're wrong, and you're going to start failing, because it is a constant. I'm still learning. I've got one boss in front of me, the president. I am still learning. I watch him, I watch others. I am still learning. And by the way, I mean, if I had to say one thing to you about leadership, don't rush it. Don't rush it. There's an awful lot of emphasis on leadership now, and that's good. We talk about those qualities, but don't rush it. The people I have seen fail in leadership are those who went up too fast. You can think of leadership like a staircase, or starting on a fitness regime. You know how many of us got up on the 1st of January and said, God, I got to lose 15 pounds and get back into the gym. Well, you don't just jump on the treadmill and run 5 miles. You kill yourself. It's a step process. You know, you're, okay, well, maybe I can get up to a mile and do it in 10 minutes, and next week. It's a staircase, and at each point you learn, and at each point you can fail. And failure is actually good. We have a culture now that we've developed that says failure is bad, perfection is wonderful, be it in how our skin and our eyebrows look and our figure looks right through to the kind of car we drive. And failure is actually good. As somebody once said, failure is the opportunity to begin again intelligently. And Lord, we all fail. Everybody fails, and a little humility is a great lesson, is a great teacher, is a great teacher. But you know, I did that, I was director, and then there were changes, and they were doing things at the graduate school, and the then provost said, Deirdre, you have been so involved, we need somebody to step into the graduate dean role. Would you do it? And that's really how I got into full-time administration. Again, it was give me 24 hours. Went back and thought about it, and I said, yes, I will do it. And I started finding that I loved doing these things. I had a passion for it. Now that's the key thing too. All the while, the thing that was motivating with me was this great belief, as with you, in education and the power of education. In my home country, I saw that education was the vehicle to get us up and out of the mess that we were in. And frankly, if there'd been more education and less fear and prejudice, we mightn't have been in the mess we were in. But education is such a powerful vehicle. And every university I've been, and I've been at a range of different universities, from Research One land grants through more rural universities or here in an urban setting, I only want to be in a place where I can do some good and where I'm confident that education can be the transformative vehicle that it is. So I have found that all the way up, and here I am now in Cleveland, again at a place where I feel we can really do some good. And if that's not your inner motivation, it should not be ego, it should not be hubris, it should not be the next pay raise, it's not that. Can you do some good, and can you find good people to work with who will help you get there? I endorse the thing about the team. I've always been fortunate enough and I've appointed really good teams, and you want people to empower them and let them get on with the job. Don't micromanage. No point in appointing good people and then handicapping them with your interference. Don't micromanage. And the other thing is, don't appoint either a bunch of yes people or Pollyannas. You don't want people who sit on their hands with no response. You don't want people to go, yes, Madam Provost, no, Madam Provost, 3 bags full, Madam Provost. You want somebody to say, really, Deirdre? You really think that's going to work? Or let me tell you, we tried that the last time, and it was a disaster. And you have to be prepared to say, yeah, okay. And you have to allow those people to give you a reality check or just tell you. You might say, well, why didn't it work? Tell me what were the issues, and we might have a go at it the second time if we change the parameters a little bit. But listen to them. The person I learned to listen to most, particularly I was in North Carolina, was a great executive assistant I had, a lady from Samoa who was dedicated to the university in her own way, had never been to college, but boy, did she know what was going on. And she was saying, Deirdre, I think you ought to go over to graduate school. Things aren't very happy over there. You go, really, Margaret? What's going on? She said, well, I just think you ought to go over. And she had her ear to the ground. Never fool yourself that it's just the top-level managers who know what's going on. Sometimes you want to find out. You talk to people at different levels. And boy, was she right every time. And I was so appreciative. I used to call her the real vice chancellor because she knew what was going on. And she knew the university way more than I did when I arrived there. Because every time those of us who are administrators or you move to a different company, you've got to spend time learning the culture. You've got to figure out what works and what doesn't work and how people, and everywhere is different. And so the first thing you do is, right, you do listen and you learn. You don't parachute in with a plan to fix everything at day one. You got to learn quite a lot. Competencies, I have to say, I would endorse would be saying integrity. Integrity is everything. If you have no integrity, you don't have that in the bank, you've got nothing. Nobody's going to believe you. Nobody's going to trust you. Nobody's going to follow you. So that is everything. I think passion and vision are everything too. There's an old saying from prophets, without vision, the people shall perish. There has to be vision. You have to be able to articulate that vision. You have to be able to persuade people, and you have to lead them, sometimes gently, sometimes a little bit more forcefully, into what you think that vision is. You've got to bring those people on board. And just be prepared to learn. One of the things, and resilience is something, because you're going to get knocked about and bashed. And if you're in a comfort zone, you're not going to progress. You've got to be prepared to get out there and get beaten up a little bit. And if you're afraid to do that, don't go into leadership. And just be prepared to overcome obstacles. I mean, one of the biggest, most devastating things that happened to me, I'd finished my master's at age 22. And I applied to Oxford to do my doctorate. And we have a slightly different system over there. We come straight with the proposal of our thesis. None of this comps, because we've worked so hard. And I went in before a board of 12 eminent professors. And when I go back at it, I think, God, how cheeky I was in some of the things I was proposing. But somehow when you're young, you've got some I proposed this, I was accepted to get into Oxford, then you get accepted into a college. I thought, boy, have I got it made now. Well, the political situation in Northern Ireland was such, we were funded, I never paid anything for my education, that we were state funded all the way through. And I was owed at least another 2 to 3 years postgraduate education. And my parents had moved to the Republic of Ireland, and they said, we can't give you any money. I said, but I'm supposed to be independent of my parents. And they said, but you're in England now. It was pure politics. It was pure discrimination. I'd fought my way into Oxford. I'd gotten that place. Couldn't go. Oxford was very nice. We said, we'll keep the place open for you. But it's not like here, you don't kind of work your way through college. And I thought, what do I do now? I had to scramble. I applied for so many jobs. I landed on my feet as a research assistant at the Open University, which is a wonderful place. If any of you are not familiar with it, it was the original work of the BBC and the government really training older students. So here I was at 22 teaching people who were 30, 40 years older than me. That can be humbling too. Mm-hmm. So you got to be able to overcome obstacles, overcome resilience, and you will develop some scar tissue, and you just have to learn how to pick yourself up and keep going. Then just finally on that, I would say, take care of yourself. These are tremendously demanding jobs. And if you don't take care of yourself, you won't be good to anybody. I don't mean mollycoddle yourself, but a healthy person does a much better job. So there is also and don't let the job define you. It might consume you. It's good to have that passion. Don't let it consume you, because one day you might have to walk away from it. Have some balance in your life and know that even if this job goes away, you're still you. You still retain all those qualities, and you can find another channel to direct those into. So that's it for now.
You haven't left me anything to say. None of you. Let me start by responding to that introduction. I want you to know I finished the rigorous discipline of physics as a major at Norfolk State University in only 3 terms. Kennedy, Johnson, and Nixon were the 3 terms. I want you to understand that there's nothing magical about the length of time it takes you to get a degree. Just make sure you get that degree. That's the important thing. The other thing is, I grew up in a family of 11 children, 5 boys and 6 girls. My mother only went through the 8th grade, my father through the 4th. They grew up in North Carolina, and they used to cry because they could not attend school. They used to tell my brothers and sisters and me that they would pray for rain during harvest season, because if it rained during harvest season, they couldn't work in the fields those days, and that gave them an opportunity to attend school. One of the things I learned, not only about leadership, but about life, they were not uneducated, they were self-educated. The smartest people I've come to know. And some of the most profound lessons that have seen me through life came from them. They used to tell me that education without common sense is like a load of books on the back of a jackass. If you have to choose between education and common sense, make sure you choose common sense. But leaders seem to be blessed with both. They also used to tell us that you should get enough education so you never have to look up to anybody. And then get a little bit more so you'll be wise enough not to look down on anybody either. What you will discover about all leaders is they have a knack for making all people feel comfortable, from the people who sweep the floors to the people who own the corporation. You cannot lead with your ego, as you pointed out. That is extremely important. Other thing is, you really need to be focused on your subject matter. You first have to be good at what you do before you could even aspire to be leadership. But you can't get so focused on that. At NASA, I used to tell my colleagues about focusing on missions and projects. One example that I gave back when I was given this honorary degree from Cleveland State is when our oldest son was in high school. He and his friends asked me for the definition of a human being, but they wanted it in engineering terms. The definition I gave them was a human being is a complete self-contained, totally enclosed power plant, available in a variety of sizes and colors, and reproducible in quantity. Human beings are relatively long-lived, have major components in duplicate, and science is rapidly making strides towards solving the spare parts problem. Humans are waterproof, amphibious, operate on a wide variety of fuels, enjoy thermostatically controlled temperature, circulating fluid heat, evaporative cooling, have sealed and lubricated bearings, audio and optional direction and rangefinder, sound and sight recordings, and are equipped with a sophisticated control center called a brain. But when I was through with that description, what became significant to me is what has been omitted. What goes beyond the mere fact of this robot's existence and turns it into a human being? What makes it different from such mechanical marvels as the Viking lander, the Pathfinder lander, or the Spirit and Opportunity rovers on Mars? Young people, the meaning of being human is the most significant of all subjects. Science will never be able to reduce the value of human commitment to a formula. It will never be able to reduce the value of respect one for another, help one for another, love one for another. Science cannot reduce that to arithmetic. The challenge of accomplishment in living, the depth of insight into beauty and truth, these things shall always surpass the scientific master of nature. And I tell my colleagues at NASA, you can have all the technical knowledge in the world at your fingertips, but if you want a caring human being, you're the most dangerous creature on earth and the most unfulfilled. So you're going to be leaders, but you also have to make sure that you are a caring human being. Leadership. I always tell the young employees that come at NASA, look, the best way to apply for the next level position is to do the best job in the position you hold. I never had a 5-year plan, any plan. I just made sure that whatever my responsibilities were, that I gave my all to perform that. Some people concentrate so much on where they want to go the next position that they neglect the position they hold. So you cannot afford to do that. I won't bore you with integrity. Everybody says that, and I just simply say this. They're right. If you have integrity, nothing else matters. If you don't have integrity, nothing else matters. I learned early in life, I served in every leadership role within NASA, from a researcher all the way up to becoming the center director. And one of the things that I learned, let me put it to you this way. I don't know anyone who has ever taken a rental car to the car wash before they turned it in. But watch what happens if it's their car, especially if it's new. How far away they park at the mall from other cars, will not drive over a freshly tarred road or loose gravel. The message is, look how people treat things when they own them versus when they're owned by someone else. So every opportunity I had to give employees an opportunity to participate in developing the rules, the policies, and procedures, in fact, they would end up treating them better because they own them, have a part in the ownership. So if you're going to be a true leader, learn how to involve people. Now, it's not always possible or appropriate. And oftentimes people believe because you ask for their input, you ought to decide based upon that input. But giving people an opportunity to be heard is extremely critical. Humility. I was hired to be a consultant for a nuclear power plant company. They wanted to locate a nuclear plant in the state of South Carolina. So they hired me as a consultant to go around the state giving lectures on the biological effects and the environmental effects of ionizing radiation. They paid me quite well, and they had a chauffeur-driven limousine waiting for me every time I flew into North Carolina to take me around to the state, to various locations. One night I'm riding, and the chauffeur looks at me and says, you know, Dr. Earls, I've heard you give that lecture so often, I could give it myself. I said, surely you jest. He said, no, I'm serious. I said, well, I'll tell you what. They don't know me in this little town we're approaching. I'll sit in the back of the auditorium. As the chauffeur, you go up and deliver the lecture. Well, he went up verbatim, punctuated, delivered the lecture. In fact, he did it so well, he finished a few minutes earlier than I would finish when I gave the lecture. At this occurrence, the MC stepped forward and said, well, you know, Dr. Earls finished a little earlier than we thought. So we have time for a few questions from the audience. I did just like The lady stood up and said, you know, Dr. Earls, you define the Röntgen as that amount of X or gamma radiation such that the associated corpuscular emission per gram of air at standard temperature and pressure is one electrostatic unit of charge of either sign. But you didn't say how that differs from the REM and the rad. I smiled even brighter. The chauffeur dropped his head, looked up and said, in my entire career, that's the easiest question I've ever heard. As a matter of fact, it's so simple, I'm going to let my chauffeur in the back of the room stand up. The message is, I can learn from everyone. I've never met anyone who wasn't superior to me in some dimension. A deacon in my church used to say, God did not give anybody everything, but he gave everybody something. And as leaders, your role and responsibility is help people develop that something that they have inside. Your primary role is to help people expand and develop their capabilities to the maximum extent possible. So.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis. Thank you. You have to shut yours off. Okay, thank you. Thank you. This has been a very enlightening session so far, and I just have a few questions. You've done a fantastic job in talking to us about your experiences and about leadership. Just a couple of areas I'd like to dig a little bit deeper on. Looking back and thinking about your leadership experiences throughout your career, can you tell me about what you feel has maybe helped you best prepare for some of the roles that you've taken on? And you can choose some specific roles or your leadership in general as a package, but what maybe specifically helped you prepare for that our students might be able to learn from?
Start with me?
We can start on the opposite.
Okay. Oh, okay. Well, it's kind of a repeat. And Dr. Earls hit on it, and the idea is you can't turn up your nose at anyone. For instance, a mentor of mine was a lady that her job, and she had about three children. Her job was coming in, cleaning the shop floor and cleaning the washrooms, but she knew everything that was going on in that plant and operation. And ever so often, I'd get that visit, say, Dwayne, you know what? We need to be careful of that machining group over in Plant 5, you know. And so things would come, and she kept me abreast of everything. She knew more about the company's stock and when to purchase and when not to purchase than I ever could possibly know. She was just in tune and well informed, and so you can't turn up your nose at anyone. There's another book, Leadership by Instinct by Mr. William Boswell, and it kind of focuses on having your network and mentors from the shop floor to the executive wing and outside of that wing. And so it's just one more book I would share with you. But to help me through, one of the neat things that happened to me in all my jobs was that I was able to write. And when it came to policy and getting things on paper and constructing letters, and it was different. I found myself, you know, almost like that. Some of my teachers, all the red marks on the sheets and correcting letters and memos before they go out. And I think that's because of some of the teachers that I had and administrators that I had. So I think the writing and communications piece is very important. And not only that, being able to take your ideas, put them on paper, but also present them to an audience like ourselves, and whether it's informational or you're convincing someone, you have the background and expertise to do that. So communications and being able to write I think was a was actually a blessing for me.
Yeah, so I want to tell you about something that was hard for me to learn, that I had to like fail at a couple of times, and then I learned an important lesson that really helps me. So I started, part of my job is academic advising, and part of my job is training faculty to be academic advisors. And so after I've been doing this for a couple years, you start to feel like you know every question that's going to come in front of you, right? So, you know, I see a couple hundred students over the course of a semester. They're not going to come in and ask me something I've never heard before, right? So I had a student come in one day and sit down and say, you know, I'm really thinking about, you know, this math, and I don't know what to do about this, that, and the other thing. And I said, oh, so, well. And I gave the rundown of all these various options and all this stuff. And I didn't listen to that student's experience and their story before I started to answer their question. The student was very polite, and she sat back and listened to all that. And she said, yeah, I know all that stuff. I read the handbook. This is my question. And she told me her question. And her question was actually a really challenging question. Her question was about, you know, fitting in this math with some other majors and this really unique idea she had about some topics that she wanted to study and put together in a whole different way. And after I sat back and listened to her for a while, I thought, wow, this is really cool. This is something really different. And so I had gotten to a place where I was enjoying my work, but I started to forget that there's still things I don't know. And having that student remind me there are still things I don't know was really important. And so now when I work, and I work with some of the staff in my office and so on, you know, I'm helping them solve a problem where I assign them a job that they have to get done, and so I want to empower them to do it. I need to remember that I'm going to assign them the job, and when they come back to me to tell me how it's going, I need to let them tell me before I assume I know how it's going, or I know what's happened, or I know what struggles they've come upon. You have to let the person in front of you tell you their story so that you're responding to what they need and not what you think they need. Whatever that person is and however they've come to you to be a part of your work life. And so education is central to me, and education is a really critical thing, and we are always learning because we should always be listening.
I want to talk a little bit about the power of reflection. We are also busy. Like today I started at 8:30. That was a late start, but I had to start off with a breakfast. I think we're now in the season where I have 3 meals a day for Cleveland State University, which is not good for one. And sometimes my day goes, 7:30 to 8 to 9, 9 to 10, 10 to 11. It'll go all the way through to 7 o'clock at night. And I might have a sandwich at my desk. That's not good for you either. And you're rushing. So we're doers. And some of us, I think, are just genetically doers. I was a sprinter at school. That's me. I'm out of the starting blocks, and I'm 60 meters down there before somebody goes, excuse me. And so you're doing and doing and doing. And you're going to you've got the next thing and the next thing and the next thing to do. And the more you move up, believe it or not, the more things you have to do. It's not like it gets easier or cushier. You've got more responsibility, bigger things to manage, bigger budgets, bigger personnel. Your day can be filled. At some point, if you're going to do this well, and if you're going to be a good leader, it's not just the listening, which is absolutely paramount, taking time. It's time for self-reflection. You should surround yourself with people who give you a reality check saying, really, Deirdre, or really, Julian? I mean, I remember once coming out of a meeting and saying, I don't understand these people. I don't understand people who have no ideas. I mean, I thought they were just like concrete. I could get nothing out of them. I said, I don't understand these people. And I said, maybe I have too many ideas, and all my staff are going, yep, you have too many. And a good friend of mine, who actually happens to be a nun, said to me, Deirdre, how much time in your day do you spend in reflection, in inner reflection? The Jesuits are very good in this, I'm telling you, about taking time at the end of the day, reflect. What have I done today? What have I done well? What have I done badly? What could I do better? What did I learn from what I did today? So one of the problems, especially if you are rushing to leadership, not doing the job well that you're in before doing the next one, is you're not taking the time to reflect. We all have to look in a mirror at various points in the day. When you get to my age, you don't particularly like what you're seeing in the mirror, but you know, that's me. That's me in the mirror. I can't deny it. You're looking at something, you're looking at reality. If you do not take the time to reflect, all kinds of things go wrong. You can end up thinking you're the smartest person in the room. You're going to think you've got the answer, that your way is the only way, and that you're brilliant. In fact, when all of those things could be wrong, and that you're doing the wrong thing. So reflection, self-reflection, reflection with others, with your team, is absolutely paramount.
I learned that you have to be careful about the people you choose once you get in a leadership role. Another thing my folks used to say is, you cannot carve rotten wood. Now, as a youngster, I had no clue what that meant. But think about it. If you see a nice wooden statue or figurine, it had to be carved from wood that was a solid core. And that applies to people as well. If you want a good leader, you have to start with a good person. You want a good teacher, a good doctor, a good lawyer, good anything. You have to start with a good person. And often in management roles, you have to be careful because people like to select the people that are members of the nod squad. Or my friend used to say that often organizations are like a bunch of monkeys in a tree. Those looking down see smiling faces, and those looking up, you know what they see. They see something different. So what you have to do is you make careful that as you are choosing people, you choose people that treat people correctly from their level down, not just from their level up. So, and not giving awards to people who do not deserve them, because the moment you do that, you cheapen the award for those people who do, and you destroy your credibility, because all workers in an organization know the people who deserve to be rewarded.
I have only one more question to ask of our panelists, and then what we would like to do is open the floor to you so that you have an opportunity to ask any questions that you may have related to this. My final question is, we've talked a little bit about the challenges and we talked a little bit about the influences in your pathway. I guess I'd like you to talk a little bit more about the specific challenges that you have faced. And specifically, you know, we look at leadership and we know it doesn't always come easily, but there are times when it did just the opposite come easily, and maybe you didn't make the right decision, or you felt very challenged by having to be the leader in that moment of time. So could you think about an example where you've encountered that and how you've overcome it, or what you've learned from it? And we will start at the other end of the table for Mr. Crocker not to be on the right.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? I'm having a hard time hearing.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is this better? Yeah. Okay, sorry about that. What we want to do is just explore a little more deeply about what happens in times of challenge when maybe your leadership abilities weren't quite honed or you didn't have the outcome that you were looking for, what some of our panelists may have done in those experiences that can help you in your future. So,
Well, probably the greatest challenge was after the most recent shuttle tragedy. I was asked to serve on a team within NASA to develop a plan for assuring that that kind of thing never happened again. And one of the things we had to do was not just analyze it from a technical perspective, but to look at it from all areas. And the biggest sort of surprise for me was the culture within an agency as large as NASA that had people literally reluctant to speak the truth in the presence of a management team. How often managers would be in a meeting and state their opinion first. And the moment they did that, often that would keep people from expressing their true opinions. So trying to develop a plan for changing the culture in an organization as large as NASA was extremely difficult to do. But we managed to put together plans that would encourage people to in fact speak out and in fact reward people for that. So I taught Tri-C for many years, and I used to teach physics, and I would teach a little of the history of physics to make the course learnable and relevant. After one test, on about 10 questions, I asked, what can you tell me about the great physicists of the 18th century? One student wrote, they're all dead. But I had to give her credit. The answer was absolutely correct. But what I learned is in life, young people, often it is more important to know the right questions to ask. Knowing the right questions to ask rather than the right answers. And that's been a big challenge on my part to try to learn to do.
Well, if you work in public education, I think you're in constant challenges because I think we know the environment is such that our budgets always seem to be under pressure. There's a lot being asked of us. We're under a lot of surveillance. So even here, just recently, I had to go through an exercise we call it program prioritization because we realized that we've got some areas of growth, but there's no new money coming in. So it's a kind of a zero-sum game. So we actually had to prioritize. We had to say, well, we think these programs are strong and will grow. These ones we look like we can maintain, and those ones, there might be another category. It was a kind of a triage in one sense. This is not a comfortable thing to do. And there's lots of times in leadership you have to do things you'd rather not do, but they are the right thing to do because you know it's only through doing those that you arrive at a good place. And you learn from that a lot of things. Don't make it too complicated. So, I mean, we said 1, 2, or 3, and we had to do a lot of work. What I did was I had to get in front of the faculty and say, this is what we're going to have to do, guys and gals, because this is the situation we face. This is how I propose we go about doing it. These are the data we're going to use, and this is the process, and then we're going to come back to you. And we did it, and we explained it, and then I went around every single college and faced all the faculty in those respective colleges. And that wasn't an easy thing to do either. So those were challenges, but I think if you learn to be transparent in what you do, even in an environment that is contentious, adversarial, when people are losing things, I think you have to show to them that you're being transparent, that there's nothing secretive, nothing going on. At the very least, the process has got to be respected in terms of what you do. So we have constant challenges, and we are often pushed to do the thing that's uncomfortable. You know, we watch these things, Shark Tank and Donald Trump, The Apprentice, and all these things like, you're fired, and all this stuff. Other than people who are pathologically deranged, I don't know of leaders who get any kind of comfort out of telling people, I'm sorry, we're going to have to terminate you. Even when people are not performing, I've always felt queasy. I've never felt good, but you do it when you have to do it. So I think some of the challenges when you know you have to do what you do, but you do it in an open and transparent way.
Yeah, challenges to overcome. I think, prioritization at the university, that's a big, big challenge. I'm going to give a really very local example. So all politics is local on some level. And as I, became an administrator, and I started out as an assistant dean, and then I became associate dean. And as associate dean, there are some assistant deans that work with me, and we're all pulling together to get the same projects done and so on. And I had 2 members of my team that were not seeing eye to eye. And so one would come in my office and say, this is what we should do, and this person is totally wrong, and we should not do it that way. Then the other person would come in my office and tell me exactly the opposite. But when we would sit down and have a meeting all together, they would not disagree with each other. But as soon as the meeting was over, they would individually want to tell me why they were right and why the other person was wrong. And this becomes a very challenging situation. What are you going to do with this? And I think the first time I encountered this, I thought, oh no, I'm in the center. What am I going to decide? Who am I going to choose to be right or wrong? And actually, that's the whole wrong way to look at it. Fortunately, I didn't do that. I sat back. I talked to one of my mentors. I said, what do I do in this situation? I got some really good advice. So finally, the 3 of us sat down in a room, and I said, this person thinks that this is the way we should do it. This person thinks this is the way we should do it. I think both approaches have strength. strengths and both have weaknesses. Let's the three of us discuss. And I didn't assign any idea to anyone, but they knew who it was coming from. It was only the three of us. But because I sat down in front of the two of them and highlighted their disagreements, they were able to find a way to have a respectful conversation around their disagreements. And I think it led us to be a stronger team because they didn't know each other very well. But after we had this discussion where I sat back and just played the role of the facilitator and throwing challenging questions out there, they grew to trust each other. And now they work well together. And now they tell each other when they disagree, and they can hash it out and I think come up with a better solution than they could before. So it was challenging because I'd never been in the middle of two professional, really smart, driven people before, and getting them to see eye to eye was really interesting, but I think helped me become better in my role, but most importantly empowered them to be better in their roles.
Well, I guess a lot has been said, and I think for me, I'll give you an example of a tough challenge, and that is after an acquisition of a corporation, and a part of the plants and manufacturing facilities did not fit the business that we actually ran. So after 7 years of owning this business and having responsibility for a particular plant, we had to reorganize and rebalance that plant. In other words, it was going to eventually close. And I had come to know, like so many leaders, and you will too, as you move into certain positions, you'll come to know the men and women on the shop floor or office or wherever. You're going to come to understand, they have children in college, they have new grandchildren, they're paying for a house or a new car, and these people become family. You come to know them. If you're any kind of leader, manager, you're going to come to know people that are working for you. And so I could have very well assigned the job to the plant manager or to someone else to close the plant or make the announcement, but I elected to do it myself and gave the reasons why and gave got there to the plant and had several meetings and worked with the union and could have stopped there. But leaders, I think, take it to the next level, as I said, and I'm not saying I've been. The fact is the last day I showed up and we were handing out checks and shaking hands, and there were a bunch of guys and ladies I had known for all those 7 years, and we were hugging and crying at the same time. You become attached, and you understand human beings and their needs, and the energy it takes for them to just walk out the door and go find another job, even though they got outplacement and they got severance and everything else, right? They're still people. They're still human beings. It's one of the toughest jobs, and I've done other releasing of employees and closing of plants, but it's one of the toughest jobs when you know you got good people, want to work, but your business dictates that you just don't need this business. This plant has to go away. And so it's very tough, but if you don't take an active role in the good things as well as the bad things and let people know you're sincere, things can go very haywire for you. And so what I say is take a personal interest in everything you do, and people will know that not only you, but the corporation is 100% and doing the best they know how to make things smoother for you. So I don't know if there's any questions or not behind that.
Yes, thank you. This is your opportunity. We still have a bit of time left, and we'd like to hear from you. You've heard from a number of topics here today related to leadership, related to your career development. It may be hard at this point to project, where you're going to find yourself, but I know you all have ideas in mind of where you want to be. So please come forward and ask questions. We have a microphone on the floor there for you. You can direct them to one specific member of the panel, or you can direct them to all of the panelists, whichever you prefer. So this is your time. Thanks. And no one wants to be first ever. So, yeah, certainly. We can bring the microphone to you if you just want to raise your hand. We talked about many topics here today. Certainly you're coming from all different backgrounds and majors, so there may be something that you've honed in on. If there's something that you may have heard today that maybe isn't even connected to leadership and your career, but maybe a certain perspective that one of our panelists has presented, we would be happy to speak more thoroughly on that topic, I think.
Hello, my name is Jill Evans, and I thoroughly enjoyed your presentation from each of the panelists, and I thank you very much.
And thank you, Jill, for being the first to ask the questions.
You're welcome. But I have a couple questions that I would like to get more feedback on. And one is I would like to hear more of your experience, perhaps, or what you would encourage as far as mentorship within the community. In our city, we have a devastating problem with young people who are trapped in hopeless thinking and sometimes hopeless situations. My role is to be a leader for these young, small children as an educator. And also, I would like to hear some ideas on what you've done and what we can do to encourage our youth to be the leaders for the future.
We have to make our presence felt. I'm a member of an organization, African American Males. We've adopted Kenneth Clement School. So we are in Kenneth Clement School every week, talking to those students there, sharing with them. I'll go in and I'll tutor them on how to get ready for math proficiency exams. We have people who are physicians and so forth. So getting organizations to adopt schools, a church to adopt a school, is one thing that I think would work well, especially during the summers. What I've encouraged people to do is almost every one of the African American churches has members, they have members who have retired from teaching or other professions. And during the summers, open up those doors where those kids in those neighborhoods could come in and get reading assistance, all kinds of things. So that's one thing. The other thing I've done is I'm president of an organization called Entrepreneurial Engagement Ohio. So for high school students, I managed to get from the state $5 million, $2 million this year, $3 million next year, to go to high school students who do projects with science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and entrepreneurism. They do those projects and they get a competition. And I've been in every inner city school system throughout the state, encouraging them to get those students to, in fact, do that kind of thing. So it's a matter of taking a personal responsibility and reaching out. I'm a member of a fraternity, and we have a program called a Guide Right program, where we work with elementary school students and high school students in terms of providing mentorship and providing role models for them and going into their neighborhoods. I tell people it's not enough to go into a school during career day and not show up until next year. You have to make your presence constantly felt. So reach out to those organizations and churches and ask them about coming up, taking up a leadership mantle and doing those kinds of things.
Thank you, Dr. Earls.
Any advice or feedback that you can give about challenges with work-family balance? Sounds like you guys are all very busy, and I'm sure you have families. How do you do it? Other than self-care, I know about all that stuff.
Power of guilt, especially for women. Well, I noticed that we have a preponderance of young women in the audience here, and you will face special challenges simply by dint of being a woman. You know, you go to meetings and the guys speak louder and interrupt you, finish your sentences for you. You know, there's all kinds of, and by the way, I have never taken the notes at the meeting, and I don't fetch the coffee from when I was young, full report. But what I did have to do, even with an extraordinarily supportive husband, I think we carry a burden of guilt more than other people, and I think women in particular tend to keep doing for others before they will look after themselves. I mean, it's incredibly difficult. It's incredibly difficult. I mean, I would wrestle with moments when I thought, this is nuts. Just not going to do this anymore, or I'm not being. I remember this moment when I was busy preparing a lecture, and my son at that stage was about 14 months. And he was kind of crawling around on the ground because I was busy doing this at home, and he was kind of going, Mom, I got. And I said, wait a minute, we'll be finished in a minute. And the next thing I knew, he was curled up and asleep underneath my chair. And I just about died because I thought, oh, my poor child's gone to sleep, and I'm not even, you know, I'm continuing to write these lectures. Who am I actually taking care of around here? I think it's a struggle, and I think to think otherwise is to fool yourself. There are those people who are incredibly disciplined, who will get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, go for a run, come back and eat their, you know, smoothies and you know, eat their vitamins, and you know. But for every one of those, there's about 100 of us who go, I think I have to skip breakfast this morning, and what am I wearing today? And you know, the wonder people are not out there. I think you have to impose a certain amount of discipline on yourself if you're going to be balanced. I mean, the first year I came here, I stopped going to the gym completely because I just was overwhelmed. And I paid a price because through all the running and sports I played in my life, I've pretty much worn everything away. And it's use it or lose it. And I ended up having to get physiotherapy and all kinds of things. But then I started saying, oh, well, I finished the physiotherapy. You know what? I'm going to keep going to the gym. So at least on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, schedule permitting, I try and go. I'm nowhere near Julian. He's Mr. Super Fit guy. I can't hold a candle to him. But I think you have to do it. Yeah, whereas I've never had a desire. But those, you know, I think it's a constant struggle. But you just keep working at it all the time. Throughout your life cycle, you will find different challenges. It just morphs a little differently as you move through there. And you just always have to look after the physical side of yourself, the intellectual side of yourself, and the spiritual side of yourself. You know, we get up in our hind legs here and sometimes say, I used to say to students, if you leave this university the same person as when you came in, you have failed utterly, and we have failed you. Because really, universities are more than just places of intellectual development. They should be moral development. They should be personal development. And we're all on that journey. So you got to look after those things, and whether it means just, you know, sitting in the car with the windows up and screaming some song at the top of your lungs, or going to the gym, you got to find it. But it will be a struggle. It's the rare person who finds this easy. Even with all great supportive spouses and friends, it's always a struggle.
All I can say is, I agree.
I have a just real quick, Valerie Sikorsky. Her book is Monday Morning Leadership for Women. Take a look at it. It addresses balancing your work life, because whether you're in education, business, or whatever, you know, we all will be called on to do a variety of things. I can remember getting off an airplane at 11, 12 o'clock at night and struggling to get in bed at by 12 or 1 o'clock on a Friday, and I've missed the Friday. I've missed going out to dinner. I've missed talking, right? And so, and maybe missed family that have visited that day, right? So you have a ton of things that you may have missed in terms of family kinds of things. I think it's important to create that balance. you know, you could create those date nights or date weekends and select those hours that you're actually going to get to the gym, you know, or clean out the closet. You know, there's so many things. If you're not disciplined to do it and stick to it, and it's a chore. And sometimes you get setbacks, but you got to keep getting back into it. Otherwise, it takes you over. And what happens is, and I've seen it because I've had well over close to 1,000 sales engineers and administrative people across the country. And the fact is that I'd see some of my managers a day before Christmas or 2 days before a holiday, for instance, and their home is Minneapolis, but they're taking care of a customer in California. Why are you there? Why aren't you with your family? It's so important for you to take care of this. We know you're going to take care of the customer, but it's crucial for you to create that balance and make it happen. Most corporations, most managers, most supervisors, most leaders, all leaders, understand this. So you create it and stick to it, and people understand it. I can recall, and I'm just give you a short story. I can recall my son, I coached his baseball team, and I travel quite a bit, 70, 80%. And the fact is that I coached his team, and on those Tuesdays and Thursdays when he had baseball, I would have to be in Detroit or Chicago or whatever, and I tell the guys, or before I get there, I says, my son has a baseball game, I'm coaching it, I need this meeting to stop, hard stop at 12:30 so I can get back to Cleveland. I'm coaching that team. Okay, Dwayne, we understand, not a problem. People understand it if you explain it to them. And I think today's millennials, that balance is very important. And more leaders and managers understand it. So you gotta get it to click in.
Thank you. And Dr. Diolio, I see you have the microphone. Did you have anything you wanted to add to that, or?
No, it just ended up in my hands.
Okay, good answer. We are running about 5 minutes over in the topic and discussion of work and life balance. I know that many of us are thinking about the next place where they need to be right now, so I don't want to cause undue stress upon any of you. I do want to let you know that there will be two more sessions within this series, April 22nd and April 27th. You can find that information on our website. We are having panel discussions across 3 different sessions, as I mentioned. Tonight's, I think, was the most, it's been very interesting to me. Hopefully you've gained some helpful information as well. I think a common theme here is that, I haven't heard from anyone that leadership is all about charisma or all about charm or all about the political powers, but really that it's about the grit. And we as Clevelanders, we know we have that grit. It's about hard work. It's about taking care of yourself, taking care of others. So I'm very anxious to transfer some of this information to our website. So I encourage you to to go to the Graduate Student Resource Center website. I have flyers on the tables outside if you want to grab those. There's information that will be on our website over the coming months, and also we will have videos of each of these of 3 series for you to view at that time. So quickly, I would just like to say thank you to all the panelists who made time for this session. I think we all recognize the importance of our graduate students, and your success is our success, most certainly. I'd also like to thank Dr. Schulteis for her assistance with this, and our 3 students. I couldn't have done it without my planning team. Michelle Yan Lee is our graduate assistant in the College of Graduate Studies. Marissa Suslowitz also works in the College of Graduate Studies. They've been very helpful. And Erica Wiley was here. She had to leave for her class. So I'm very thankful for all that. And I wish you all a nice evening.